When a private equity roll-up works, the financial gain can be exceptional. But it helps to know what industry you should pursue. What makes an industry attractive for a roll-up strategy? That's exactly what we'll be exploring in this video, so let's dive in. For a terrific example of a private equity roll-up that made people a lot of money, take private equity firm Leonard Green & Partners' investment in car washes when it acquired Mr. Car Wash for $500 million in 2014. At the time, Mr. Car Wash only had 134 locations, or about 2% of the market. In June of 2021, the private equity firm took Mr. Car Wash public with 400 locations. And in August of 2022, when the Wall Street Journal published this article, titled "Private Equity Wants to Wash Your Car," Leonard Green's initial investment of $250 million had grown by 10 times. So why did this work? At the time, private equity wasn't really interested in car washes, so they had light competition. Also, the space was fragmented, which gave them plenty of opportunity to consolidate. And finally, the model changed to a subscription service, which made revenue more consistent. But it doesn't always work out that way. An older article in the Harvard Business Review claims that over 2/3 of roll-ups fail to produce value for investors. So you have to know what you're doing. Thrasio, a so-called Amazon aggregator, learned this the hard way by gobbling up third-party sellers on Amazon and later filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy due to an unsustainable debt load. So what makes an industry attractive for a roll-up strategy? In this video, we're going to identify 5 variables to consider. And the first is sufficient multiple arbitrage. In your target industry, you should be able to verify that a business of the scale your strategy is trying to create will sell for a significantly higher multiple of EBITDA than the small firms you have to buy to execute the strategy, preferably at least 2 turns or more. In practice, a multiple of 5 times or less for the small firms can make it less likely that the strategy encounters pressure to acquire targets in excess of the platform multiple in the event of an unexpected industry-wide downturn. We've shown this in other videos on ASM, but very quickly. If you can acquire businesses at a lower multiple than your overall exit multiple, then the acquisitions are accretive, meaning that you've created more value than the capital required to make the acquisitions. So in this first instance, we have a platform with 10 million of EBITDA, which we acquired for 10 times EBITDA, and 3 add-on acquisitions, each with $5 million of EBITDA that were acquired at 5 times EBITDA. In the first chart titled Capital versus Enterprise Value, you'll see that these 4 acquisitions required total capital of $175 million, but that we've created an enterprise value of $250 million. Now, this is a very simple chart that ignores the challenges of integration. We're showing all the value creation simultaneously to highlight how multiple arbitrage works in a roll-up strategy. But what's even more impressive in the second chart, titled Equity Invested versus Equity Value, is the fact that the combined scale allows you to make all of these acquisitions with debt. In this example, the amount of debt available for the combined platform is equal to 50% of its enterprise value. And because these acquisitions are made at half the multiple of the platform, you don't have to invest any additional equity in any of these bolt-on acquisitions. But if we change the multiple to match the multiple of the platform, then you'll see that multiple arbitrage fails to create any value. And if we actually increase the multiple of these add-on acquisitions to be in excess of the platform multiple, then the roll-up will actually destroy value. Identical multiples don't create any value, and if you end up overpaying, you will actually destroy value. You can download this template with the link available beneath the video player if you want to mess around with the assumptions. The second is that you should benefit from economies of scale. There should be specific discernible potential for scale economies by way of levers like reduced overhead, increased purchasing power, openings for greater automation, lower cost of capital for financing, and opportunities for cross-selling to fragmented customer bases. These things are often highly correlated and serve justification for the multiple arbitrage potential of an industry. Third, the industry should be highly fragmented. The more target acquisitions that exist in a marketplace, the more leverage you'll have to negotiate an attractive price. So the industry should be sufficiently fragmented with a long tail of potential acquisition targets, preferably hundreds, if not thousands. For typical roll-ups, these should be in the range of $5 to $20 million of revenue. But you shouldn't ignore an industry just because big players already exist. These larger players can also make for an attractive exit strategy. And in some cases, these firms can make for a great initial platform acquisition. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you're planning to roll up the supply side of a B2B market, and the demand or customer side is currently undergoing consolidation, it can be a positive, because the consolidating customers will likely be interested in dealing with a larger, more sophisticated supplier. Next, you want to confirm that the industry isn't already popular with consolidators. While a large player in your industry of choice can be a positive, an industry undergoing consolidation may be reason to proceed cautiously. Unlike most every party you go to, consolidation is a party you want to arrive at early. Industries such as funeral homes, veterinarians, and dentists, for example, have been heavily scraped over by consolidators in recent decades, meaning that many of the most attractive targets have already been snapped up, and any remaining multiple differentials are likely eroded by demand. And finally, you ideally want to find an industry that's growing with limited cyclicality. Highly cyclical businesses often become cash-strapped at the bottom of the cycle, which makes it difficult to keep the acquisition engine running. For most of these rules, there are always exceptions. But it's good to have a very clearly defined thesis or rationale if you plan to ignore variables that facilitate value creation. A well-executed roll-up requires a lot of forward thinking. In addition to a strong acquisition thesis, you need to have a firm grasp of deal-making mechanics, the process required to properly integrate an acquisition, and a heavy focus on culture. When you're building these models in Excel, it's easy to forget that you're talking about combining hundreds of people under one umbrella. So while it's not necessarily industry related, always focus on the people on the other side of the table. All right, team, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.